Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest edition of the Fireside with Founders and Leaders podcast. I'm delighted to be joined this time by Richard Alberg, who is currently CEO of a company called Aptem. Now, that's not Richard's only position, as he's also in an advisory position to a number of other companies, as well as having founded a host of other companies in the past, including 2 successful exits, which you'll hear all about on today's episode. So I really hope you enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed speaking to Richard. There's so many learns if you're going through that journey of being a founder in a startup, looking at some of the things to watch out for and what you can hopefully achieve if you go down the right direction. I hope you all enjoy. Thanks for watching and listening. Hello, Richard, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, look, thank you so much for giving up your time to join. And as we were just saying off air, fresh back from a time away, sort of skiing, having a bit of downtime, time to relax, come back feeling motivated and refreshed, ready to go again.
Absolutely. Really, the break makes all the difference, especially being active, fresh air. Such a contrast to sitting at a desk all day. So yes, I'm back motivated and, well, certainly for a fortnight before another holidays becomes a necessity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that needs to be encouraged, I think, in most places, that to go away, take a bit of a break, have a bit of downtime, and let your mind and creative juices sort of flow outside of an office or home environment, wherever it may be, and actually give your mind that time to come back and refresh ultimately.
Yeah, and I think actually on 2 levels. The first is we're a knowledge economy. Therefore, more and more the premium I'm placing on my staff is, as well as myself, is the quality of their ideas and how effective they are in doing things, not how many things they do a day. We're not a production line process. So getting that break, keeping refreshed really matters from that perspective. The other side is there's a fair bit of stress in the workplace. Burnout is corrosive and breaks really make a difference. So where once upon a time, certainly earlier in my career, I would resent when people went away. I think especially now there are more individuals in the firm, there's more capability of someone else to pick things up while one person is away. But especially now I recognize just how important it is to encourage myself and my colleagues to take full advantage of breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so key. It's so key, and especially in this day and age, whereby we're most of the time people are locking themselves in their own living rooms or wherever they may be, and not getting out and seeing other people. So, well, I'm glad to hear you've had a really nice time off. I'm suitably jealous. So, but let's talk a bit more about you if we can. So, you've done a whole host of things throughout your career, including sort of working with sort of companies to sort of look at sort of advertising and marketing, through to working quite closely in a business that's linked with my industry, so in recruitment with PSL. So tell us a bit more about your career to date and how you got into what you're doing now.
Well, I am one of those accidental entrepreneurs. First of all, I don't think I've ever been a particularly effective employee. So I started my own business at quite a young age because I always felt I knew best. Interestingly, I think that goes to one of the characteristics of business effectiveness, because it wasn't that I knew best. And the more I've thought about it over time, the more often I've recognized things I wish I'd done differently. But the fact I had a plan, not I'd say bad the plan is, but perhaps it wasn't always the most well thought out plan, but it was a plan and it was executed with vigor. And combine those two, there's a reasonable chance of success. Simply energy plus focus. So over the years, I started in advertising because back in the days, I've been around the block a few times, advertising was the cool thing to do if you worked in London. So I started in advertising, set up my own agency, did okay, sold it to my partners, found myself a new business in the field of psychometric testing just because it interested me, and turned that into a reasonably large enterprise, which I sold to an American public company. And then by the time I sold that business, we were a technology firm. You know, the psychometrics, the psychologists, statisticians, they were essential to what we did. But how we delivered what we did was all powered by technology. And in terms of capital employed in our business, the technology side was the area with the most resources. And indeed, the single point of failure. You know, if our technology failed, we had no business. All our customers were consuming it in that way. So I became a technology entrepreneur by accident. And then since then, I've now set up, well, some years ago set up aptem, and we now provide a SaaS platform in the space of vocational training. In fact, we're the largest platform in our niche, most widely in the UK. We're the largest. And along the way, I've also had a few other businesses, had a training company that I co-founded that we sold to private equity, sit on a few boards, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where I am today.
Very nice. Good. And so as you've just mentioned there, you've done a whole host of different things in different areas. So when you're accidentally entrepreneuring, as you put it, what is it you're looking for when you're sort of setting up a business? You know, you're sort of getting into these various different sort of areas. You said you got into advertising because it was the done thing, right? It was cool in the sort of the 80s and sort of early 90s to be in advertising if you wanted to go out there and do something in London, make some money. And so what are you looking for though when you're setting up a business? Is it you've just got an interest in it, or is there other metrics that you're thinking, okay, well, this is an opportunity? What is it all about?
Well, first of all, I don't want to virtue signal. You know, I am so lucky. You know, there's a roof over my head. I've never really had to worry too much about, you know, is there food on the table, etc. I think for many people, it's needs must, and you do what you have to do. But if you do have some choice in life, and that is a big if, but if you do, find something that interests you. That really matters. Find something you feel reasonably good about, you know, that you feel, hey, I like what it is we do as a living, not just I make money from it. I come from a family of immigrants. You know, we 2-3 generations back, it was just putting food on the table and needs must. I mean, there wasn't a lot of latitude. So it's a very privileged position to be where you can just actually, I find something that gives me a sense of satisfaction and interest. It's nice to do some good in the world. I think I would question certain sectors, whether I'd want to make a living from them. But most important of all, you know, it's whether it turns you on, whether it interests you. I mean, you know, I like making money from a business, and I'm not in any way going to say no thank you when it comes to some of the spoils of success. But that's not the be all and end all. What really matters is that you can get up in the morning and look forward to the day, and that you can, at the end of the day, think that was quite fun, that you can chat to your mates about what you do and actually quite like describing it. Those things really matter. I also think there's another characteristic that people should consider, which is distinctive competence. You know, what is it you're good at that perhaps a lot of other people aren't quite so good at? And does that overlap with commercial opportunity? There's no point being really effective at something that everyone else is pretty good at, and therefore it's really hard to make a living from, because you don't stand out. You can't distinguish yourself. So if you can find the area that plays to your strengths, that combines with demand, then, you know, hone in on there.
And how do you sort of work to sort of find those strengths? Because that's a really good point in terms of looking at playing to your key strengths, to doing things that other people can't do. But I often find that not everyone is aware of their own strengths and the things that they are good at, and they kind of just go through life just doing what they do, but again, not realizing how brilliant they are sometimes. So how do you work to sort of find those things out for yourself to then put that into practice when working in a business?
Not very well. To be honest, again, you know, age and having done things over a while helps. But if I look back, I think it's it's one of those sort of life's jokes that the thing that makes me quite effective is a sense of self-confidence and purpose that I know the answer. I'm going to make it happen. I'm right, which has always made me a very poor listener. So I think when I was younger, having a good mentor would have made a real difference to me. But of course, had I had a good mentor, I doubt I'd have listened. So that is the ultimate irony. So I think over time I've learned what I seem to do quite well. But I think in the earliest days, it really was a sense of I'm just not going to give up, tenacity. A lot of what I did wasn't very smart, but I kept on bloody doing it until I started getting results, and that eventually started working. But for me, it has been trial and error, I fear.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair enough though, because that's it's a virtue that I see in a lot of founders of businesses is that tenacity, and I can put myself in that position as well of looking at, okay, well, it's taken me a long time to really work out what I'm good at, what I like, what I don't like when working in business, and when you're first starting out in anything, certainly when you're in your early years, you just go with the flow, really, to a degree. Most people do. Now, that's not to say there are plenty of great, young entrepreneurs and founders out there who do sort of have that from a very early age. But it's being tenacious, as you say, and believing in what you're doing and making some mistakes, trial and error, not being afraid to make some of those mistakes, and try and learn from them along the way if you can, ultimately.
Yes, I think you're spot on. I suppose there's one other characteristic that people need to think about hard, very important, which is possibly because of my own deficiencies over the years, every now and again, things have looked quite worrying. And you have to be able to sleep. If you can't cope with that, I mean, imagine those business people who had banked with SVB.
Wow, yeah.
What kind of a weekend will they have had? Now, I'm not saying that they could have impacted on the outcome because the outcome was out of their hands, but they had to be able to cope with it. There will be a time when a big customer of yours goes bust. There will be a time when something happens when the pressure seems inexorable. And I think there's a certain type of person who feels they can cope with that. And there's a certain type of person, no matter how good their skills may be, who just finds that unbearable. And those sorts of individuals will find being an entrepreneur not a lot of fun. Now, it may be that having a good partner works, and it may be that there are types of business that are perhaps less prone to putting someone in that environment. But I do think one of the, if I look back over the years, and with every business I've had, there have been times, when the dot-com crash happened after 2008. 9/11. There have been a number of occasions when, the world profoundly changed, at least for a period of time, and everything you had planned for ceases to be looking like a good plan anymore. And yet you have to keep going. And yet you have to give your staff a sense of purpose. They have to believe in you. You have to believe in yourself. And that is an important quality in an entrepreneur as much as is the ability to operate the business.
Absolutely, and I think you're spot on with your depiction there. Things will go wrong, things will not happen according to plan. You've got to be the right sort of individual to be prepared for that, and not let it phase you too much when it does eventually go in a different direction to the one that you planned for and expected it to. Now, you've obviously, as we mentioned, you've got quite a diverse portfolio of companies that you've sort of worked in. So, but often sort of working in sort of similar sectors. So, again, is the sector something that's important to you when you're talking about sort of, you talked about sort of psychometric testing being very much something that was of interest to you at the time, and the business now with Aptem in terms of training and sort of software education, is that something that you're passionate about? Talk to us a bit more about that.
No, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about it. I'd say it interests me and I care about it. I think I learned a lot from, I've had one, I'd say, quite bad failure in my business life, and that was hubris. It came, having sold my business and thought that, I am God's gift to entrepreneurialism. Look at me, haven't I done well? I invested in a snacks and drinks distribution business, and I was awful. It failed. I lost a lot of money, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, everything I tried to achieve, it didn't work out. And when I look back on it, there were two characteristics in that business that didn't work for me. First of all, it was a very low margin business. It was all about operating efficiently. And I'm not very good at that. It doesn't interest me. I'm just not interested in all those tiny little details and ensuring everything is tight. And I am full of admiration for people who can do that, who can operate in those businesses where they operate on a 1% margin and make it work, high volume, 1% margin. The second thing was it was full of stupid people. And that was also a problem. I mean, we had van drivers who would steal off the van or do stuff with the van. Notwithstanding, there were telematics in the van that would tell us that they hadn't done what they said they'd done, or ways of. They were going to get caught. They were going to get fired. There were customers who did stupid things. There were suppliers who lied to us, who we discovered their lie a week later, but so they had a window of a week. And I never understood that, because actually, long term, you invest so much in forming a business relationship with someone. Why not benefit on the long term? Why ruin it for some tiny little temporary advantage? I don't run those kind of businesses well, but there are some who do, and we need those services in our economy. So good for them. What I like are clever people who come up with interesting ideas. Most of the businesses I've been involved in that have succeeded have been profoundly different from our competitors, but we succeeded because we found our own path, and fortunately that path has been one that has been attractive to customers, or sufficient customers to make the businesses attractive. Rarely are the ideas mine, occasionally, but rarely. But what I find I like doing is working with bright people, soliciting the ideas, acting as a catalyst, and then being the idiot in the room who says, sod it, let's do it. And turning that stupid pub conversation into something where you say the following morning, actually, we've got a new business, we're doing this. Or within the business you've got, we're pursuing this new venture. And I think that's really the what I bring to the table, that sense of my ability to persuade gullible fools that let's all do this together and make this business work. And then somehow we look back 3 years later and say, good God, it did. Didn't believe that worked, but it worked. Yeah, exactly.
Not so gullible after all. A good decision. So, and so when you were setting up aptem, then let's talk about your current business. Talk to me about sort of why you set the business up and how it was formed. Was it sure. Over a pub conversation, or was there more to it than that?
Yes and no. Actually, aptem has had 3 lives. Life 1 started after I had sold my previous business and completed my earnout. And by 10 a.m. one morning, I realized I had nothing to do. And I was bored as hell. And I didn't have a need to get a job, but I did need to do something. And so I set it up as a back bedroom lifestyle business. I thought at the time, I recognized that unemployment was going up. People were very poor at finding work at a time of more competitive jobs market. I knew a little bit about employment, a little bit about technology. And I thought create a platform aimed at volume, providing assistance as opposed to a service, which is high cost, aimed at relatively small numbers of people. And we made a product that for through 2-3 years was very, very successful, but never going to go anywhere because the nature of our market was cyclical. So we would ride the demand, but then the demand would go down as the need naturally went down with the unemployment market. So, but it kept me busy and interested and intrigued, and it was nice that it was economically effective. But then I sort of trod water for a while, saying, well, where am I going to take this business? No, again, massive need for it to be an ongoing success other than my personal desire to do something interesting with it. I then recognized that the nature of the technology we built and some of the relationships we had was aligned to the needs of the vocational training market, where there was an ongoing demand and it would be worth investing. And I saw how we could take our technology and pivot it in. So really, Aptem is a child of sort of 2015, 16, when that pivot was made. And we started going through to vocational training organizations, predominantly apprenticeships, and saying, we've got a really good solution. But interestingly, that created a tremendous entrepreneurial opportunity because I had a big problem. Our technology was an end-to-end platform. And whereas our competitor solutions were largely designed to solve a particular part of the delivery challenge for the end customer. So a customer might have to have 4, 5, 6 different technology systems, each doing a different part of what they needed, like a learning management system or an e-portfolio, and then they had to somehow join them all up. I thought end-to-end delivered many, many benefits. But finding your first customer is quite challenging because essentially they'll say, so you want my entire business on your platform and it's going to be brilliant in these ways. Okay, I'll buy that. But who else have you done it for? And you're essentially saying no one. And that's a hard sell. So I thought, I know what, I'll set up a training company to be the first customer. So with a partner who is a non-exec on my own business, we set up a company called Corndell. And Corndell was the first customer for Aptem as an apprenticeship training provider. And Corndell was a lot more than just Aptem, but having good technology day one didn't hurt. And Corndell went from startup to when we sold a business 3.5 years later, we were doing well over 20 million revenue and 4 million profit with a trading all the way through COVID and using our technology to underpin how Corndell operated. So we went from that one customer to now the best part of 200 customers. But Corndell in itself was successful in its own right and very helpful at an early stage when we were trying to evangelize to the market about how Aptem could be effective for them. So the Aptem story as it's now can be told is very much the last 5, 6 years in apprenticeships, but actually there was an earlier stage, a little less glamorous, a little less fast growth, but kept me out of trouble.
Yes, exactly. It sounds like it's a really, really interesting story. Some smart moves, and you were you pivoted before it was cool to pivot when everyone else was doing it in 2020, and then to create the business to be your first customer, to then go on and build that first customer, and then sell it as you did. I mean that's really, really smart sort of business sense to go and do that. And I think that it's the sort of thing that perhaps other people in sort of similar situations, because it is tricky when you're that chicken and egg scenario thinking, well, I know we've got something here, but it's a really tough sell to go and say to other people, yeah, I know, I believe that we can do this, and that everyone wants to see, well, who else have you done it for? And if you're saying no one, it's very unlikely that you'll get people biting.
It's a tough one, and I'd love to say with hindsight it was all the plan. You know, there was a little bit of navigating our way through, but yes, I didn't have an alternative. And in fact, I came across a healthcare technology company not so long ago who seemed to be doing something quite similar, where their approach is quite original using technology, and they're becoming an operator as well as a technology venture. And I think the operations side of what they do is very much there as the area in which you can do your development and also evidence the outcome so that the technology can be sold to a far broader market.
Yeah, nice. Very good. And so, look, Richard, we talked about some of the stuff that you've done within Winston Business and how you've sort of achieved certain things you've achieved. We talked about having tenacity and getting up and things that sort of get you up and doing what you do in the morning. But what overall do you think sort of drives you as an entrepreneur and a founder in sort of businesses to do what you do?
I think competitiveness is important. I think it's hard to be successful unless you kind of want to win. But I don't think it's the overall driver. I think a lot of it is just a sense of purpose, that you have a goal that you want to achieve, and You don't want to let go of it. I mean, tenacity was a word we used earlier. You just don't want to let go. You just want to keep on at that goal, and at the same time, you find it interesting. I mean, I've been in a fortunate position. I've had 2 exits. I don't need to get up in the morning and work in the way I once did, but I still do because it's fun. It's interesting. I love the fact I work in a company with good people. And by the way, that's one of the most interesting aspects of being an entrepreneur, and it's a startup entrepreneur. When you start up, chances are you're the best at everything your company does. Almost any function in your company, you can step in, get your hands dirty, and do a better job than anyone else whom you employ. Over time, you will start, and it's very easy. There are certain entrepreneurs who never go beyond that. There are certain entrepreneurs who never go beyond I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And if it's broken, well, that just needs me to step in and handle it. But when you can start to employ good people who you can take real pride in their ability to do stuff, you can delegate to them, then not only are you able to scale your organization massively, because there's only 24 hours in a day. The same 24 hours that, I don't know, the chief executive of Amazon, the chief executive of Microsoft, the chief executive of Google, people naming chief execs. Yeah, the same 24 hours we all have. They just have more people to whom they can hand off tasks in order to make things function. So I think when you can start to be more, I don't know, the bandmaster, directing where the organization goes, the conductor, and you're able to start having some brilliant people within your team who actually undertake the work. That's a very satisfying part of being in business. And then it's just wonderful as you start accumulating these new colleagues who all are very, very skilled, and who you start to realize that actually there are very few jobs within the organization that I could step in and do to any sort of standard that possibly I would consider acceptable if someone else was carrying it out. And you realize that your only role is to be that conductor, that the person who's guiding where we're going.
And I think that's what most successful founders will sort of tell you from everything that I've heard, is that making sure you're employing people that are all better at their jobs than you are. And then that's the key to a successful business is by the people that you generally employ, especially if you're building that business and looking to scale it and to a point whereby you may well exit it at some point further down the line.
I was going to say one other mantra I now like a stuck record on, or was for a period of time in my business, which is no heroes.
Yeah,
I don't want to have heroes in my business. There was a time, particularly when you're in startup phase, when you desperately need heroes. The hero is the person who works the night, who works the weekend, who fixes the bug, the issue, who comes up with a solution, who takes the intractable and makes it suddenly doable. And they're wonderful. You need them. But there comes a point when a business has to become a little bit boring. It has to be reliably capable. Suddenly, you don't have, oh my God, Fred's on holiday, we're screwed. What are we going to do till Fred's back? Because Fred is the only person who knows how to, and then fill in whatever in the blanks. When you get beyond that point, and you start to say it's all about really good quality teams who work well together, who communicate, who function effectively, it's actually a real joy. It's a brilliant way of running a business, and it's hard not to take satisfaction in that.
I was just going to ask you. So one of the things you talked about is obviously you've been through a couple of exits in your time so far. So what do you think were some of the key things that you sort of learnt about going through that process twice now that perhaps other people could gain some value from if they are potentially going to be in a similar position in the future?
One, decide why you want to sell. And just have that in your mind. There should be a goal behind selling. So it could be, I just don't want a mortgage anymore. And to me, the most important thing in life is paying off my mortgage and knowing I have financial security. Or it could be the only way of giving future direction to this company, which is my baby, but the only way of enabling it to develop is as a part of something bigger. Or whatever the reason is, but have a reason for doing it, because selling is awful. It is a horrible process. It is painful as hell. And the day you sign a document where you're selling the company, it's like your baby's going. That's it. My God, it's not mine anymore. It's what have I done? It's not a nice feeling. However. And it sounds terrible. Here you are signing this piece of paper that suddenly makes you financially in a very good place. So no one's going to be taking out the violins for you, but it is quite an emotional thing, disposing of that business that you built up that was nothing when you started it. So I think you've got to have a reason for selling. I think you've got to, every advisor worth their salt will tell you how difficult it's going to be. And every entrepreneur, being a self-confident individual, won't believe them and will think, no problem, I make sales, I know how to do stuff, don't worry. No, it is painful. It's painful. People waste your time. I say waste your time, wrong thing. People raise your expectations and then don't fulfill it. Yeah. You have a sense of we're nearly there, and then suddenly you're not nearly there. Stuff will happen. I mean, imagine if SVB hadn't been bailed out. Imagine a transactions that are cooking that suddenly wouldn't be happening Monday morning. Sorry, I know this is being recorded, so just in case for anyone else, Silicon Valley Bank is the big thing this weekend. But the point is, there's always it can be something that can come. Look at the budget when we had the budget in the UK under Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, where suddenly the cost of borrowing would change dramatically in that fashion. Something like that can come along and just derail you, and you have to be able to cope with it. Then on top of that, you're going to have to go through due diligence. And do not, again, assuming that the sale is of any sort of substance, due diligence is painful, especially for entrepreneurs who tend to be the more big picture, let's go out and make stuff, because due diligence is all about the detail. That's when you start realizing all those contracts that you thought had been signed that weren't properly signed, or all of the silly little things that may be coming, who knows where that is, or whether we documented that agreement properly, or God knows what else. It can be painful, and the process can take many, many months. Now, for some people, they may have a business so very, very attractive that it's just an easy deal because people are it's so competitive to acquire their business. But let's assume not. I'd say the other thing is to work out what you want afterwards. Do you want to work in that business, or do you want to just say, you know what, I'll show you how it works. I'll do 3 months. I'll give you the keys. I'll show you what which lock each one fits. But fundamentally, I'm out of here. Or are you saying you want to work for someone else? And if you are going to say you want to work for someone else, one of the things I discovered, which is quite interesting, was when you're no longer the CEO, your jokes aren't as funny as before. It's amazing how. When you're the CEO, the world feels like a particular way. When you have a meeting, people look to you, they're attentive to you, whatever. Suddenly there's someone else in the room who's more important than you are. The new group CEO, the acquirer, whoever it is, you're part of a division, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it can be an unfamiliar thing and something one isn't well equipped to do. And, I think one has to think about, how am I going to handle this in the world of being, in this new world. And it may be that it's private equity, who, by the way, can be brilliant for a business. But don't underestimate. When you're selling your business, they're also competing to buy you, and they're all telling you how magnificent it's going to be. But, 5 minutes later, the documents are signed. Suddenly you work for them, and they want lots of detail, and they don't appreciate you taking decisions without properly consulting them, and all the other such things. The world changes, and rightfully so. They've just written a very, very big check for your business. So I just think it's worth someone strongly considering what it is they're doing and why they're doing it, and what they want afterwards, and ensuring that they feel comfortable with those decisions that they've made. And if you do that, then actually selling a business is the most brilliant experience going.
Make it sound almost easy, which it obviously isn't, based on the earlier part of the conversation.
100%.
So I'd like you to get your sort of other hat on for a moment, if you would. So you are also an investor and an advisor to other businesses. Given that you've obviously gone through those exits yourself and built up businesses, you are someone who is well positioned to do all of that sort of stuff. So when you are looking, though, at businesses that you might invest in, or businesses that you might go on and help advise them to get to that sort of that exit or whatever it is they're looking to do, what are the key things that you are looking for when you've got that hat on your head?
I think there must be a goal, a CEO who has a goal, or at least seems very open to having a goal, and is willing to work towards that purpose. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with a lifestyle business, but a lifestyle business is what it is. If you say, I have this business because it enables me to take Friday afternoons off, and then I do this, and then and I have lots of weekends with my family, and that really matters, and I prioritize my life and the what's afforded by the business. I can't criticize it, but it's not a business that's going to be easily sold. So I think someone needs to, have a clarity of what they're trying to build and that it matters to them. And if that's the case, and I'm looking for an individual or individuals who seem reasonably astute, willing to listen. And again, not listening isn't a crime, but there's no point having an advisor if you're not willing to listen to that person. I mean, why waste their time and my time? So I've been advised, I don't know, half a dozen firms, and I've made a number of investments, and most have done okay. Although I say that, not that many have failed so far. Let's put it that way. But there's some still in play. You never know. But with most of them, it is it's got to be a sense of, I say very early on, look, I'll always charge something. I mean, in the beginning, I sometimes did it, and I said it's got to go to charity, but you're paying. And the reason is, if you don't value you will not like writing a check for my time. The day you don't want to write that check or don't value my time, you'll find I will shake you by the hand. I'll say, well done, no hard feelings. I'm out of here, not a problem. But you've got to value my time. Otherwise, what's the point of having me around? And that's nothing to do with vanity. It's just to do with, I think it's common sense for both parties. So that aspect of you feeling that you've got something to contribute, you're not just sitting on a board so they can say we have had a board meeting. Then there's the sense of commerciality. I think it's really important that an organization understands, if it is a business, it's a business. It's there to be effective as a business. There is nothing wrong with a charity. There's nothing wrong with all sorts of other types of enterprise, but they should know what they are and what they're not. And if you're a business, it has to be an enterprise that's willing to sort of not just do what it enjoys, but to do what is necessary in order to fulfill its purpose as an enterprise and work towards a goal, and to have that sort of honesty to look itself in the mirror, work out what it's doing well, work out where it needs to do better, and take the difficult, and they sometimes are difficult, decisions necessary to improve. And I mean, I've had, over the years, I've made difficult decisions in my own business and seen others do it. I mean, there's nothing like firing a friend is really difficult. Really difficult. And by the way, one of the things, taking an aside, I really believe, you have to take difficult decisions, but you can always do it decently. You can always do it as a human being. You can always try the word compassionate is really, don't be an arsehole, but do the right thing. So if someone has to go, they have to go. Try and do it. You can't afford always to give, have 5 years money in a yacht. Can't always do everything, but you can do a certain amount, and to the extent you can, you should. Treat people with respect. Often their reason for going is nothing to do with them, but it's to do with the way the organization has evolved and demands on the organization, the demands the changed, evolving organization is now making are not ones this individual is equipped to fulfill. But take that back to my role as an advisor, it would be to have the discussion with the senior leadership team and to expect them to take those difficult decisions and implement them. And if people don't really want to do that, that's fine, but don't have me around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think you'll probably find, though, that also most people, when they're in that position of, where they need to sort of go from the business, they're probably not that happy there anyway themselves. So it's often an easier decision once you actually sort of start talking to people and you start communicating, and as you say, doing it with compassion rather than just, oi, on your bike, you're fired. Having an open dialogue, and you find that actually it's the right thing for everyone.
Yeah, correct. It's amazing how many people who I've parted company with, and I should be clear here, the list is that long, but it's amazing how many people I'm still on good terms with over the years, and there's no hard feelings. It was the right decision and worked out for both parties. But secondly, it's often for individuals and companies hard to make those kind of big people. Oh God, it's so uncomfortable. It's awkward. Maybe it'll get better. Let's leave it another month or two. Let's see what happens. As you say, people are often unhappy along the way. They know it's not right. But if you're losing someone in a terrible recession, then yeah, it may be really challenging for them to find another job. But actually, mostly the last 20 years have been pretty benign. Good people get employment. It's not a problem. They will find another job. I hope one that suits them better than the one they had with me. Face up to it. But you're asking about my role as an advisor. I suppose that's the big difference between being CEO and advisor. In my business, I do have the authority to make some significant changes. When I'm an advisor, I have no authority. I'm just that chap in the room who's expressing an opinion that they're either thinking they want to be hearing or they don't. And that's why it matters whether they really why they want you there, and whether you're just quorate, so they can tick a box and say they have a non-exec or two, or whether they actually find you useful.
Which is the point, right? It's got to make sure that it's actually going to get some value from both parties. And as you say, if someone's parting with some money, you tend to find it sorts the wheat from the chaff, as they might say.
Yeah.
Well, look, Richard, thank you so much for your time on everything so far. It's been super insightful. Lots of nuggets of wisdom given along the way. I'm sure there's loads more that you could probably give. You can be found on social media. You're on LinkedIn. Hopefully, I'm sure you're happy for people to reach out to you if they've got any sort of further questions. But look, thank you so much for coming on. Like I say, super insightful, and hopefully hear more from you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and good luck with the ongoing success of the podcast. So thank you very much.